So you have heard people saying, my contract is expiring next month. You have heard a project manager saying, the contract is now expiring in 3 months. We now need to renew. You have heard the client saying, after this contract, we are not going to renew. Let it expire, and we are not going to renew. So what does it mean actually to say a contract in a project environment? This is what we are going to cover in this video. So let's move on. You've heard it. Welcome to my channel. So in this video, I'm going to cover 3 types of contracts that you should expect to find in any program or even project environment. So if you have been involved in projects like myself for some time, you would appreciate that there must be a contract between what are normally called the buyer and also the seller in a project environment. Some they want to use the word the supplier and the customer in a project environment. But at the end of the day, there must be some written contracts between these two. So the purpose of this contract is to make sure that at least there's some continuity in case one of the representatives from both sides is no longer with the organization for 1 or 2 reasons, or has left the business for 1 or 2 reasons. So that is one point, that is one side of it. The other part of it is to have something binding. You must have at least something binding between the 2 parties. And this is where contracts come in. Some they want to call them agreements. It might imply the same thing depending on the context in which you are using those terms. So contracts are very important, and I can tell you from my experience, they can save you a lot if you're a project manager, especially when it comes to scope management. You know exactly what you're supposed to deliver. You know exactly the expectation from the client, the goals of the goals of the project, and also the objectives of the project. So when contracts are being drafted, you find that as a project manager, you are normally involved in negotiations. I've been involved in so many contract negotiations in my career, and I can tell you it's not something very easy. If you are lucky to join the project when the larger contract has been agreed, then you should be happy. But as project goes on, or as you progress in the project, you might find that as part of the process of procurement, depending on the stage or phase of the project, you might also want to appreciate and you also want to be involved in contract negotiations and eventually contract signing. So it's quite important that as a project manager, you should be well versed with these 3 types of contract. So let's move on. I hope you're enjoying this video so far. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to click the like button, the subscribe button, and the notification button so that you're the first person to be notified each time a new video is uploaded on this channel. It will also help the channel to grow. It will also help the channel to produce more videos like this one. So, of these 3 contracts, the first one that I'll start with is what is called fixed price contracts. I can tell you each and every contract has got its own pros and cons. There are cases where it's an advantage to the seller or customer. There are also cases where it's an advantage to the seller who is the supplier. So in a fixed price contract, it's normally applicable to projects where you're very sure in terms of your timelines, you're very sure in terms of your costs, and you're also very sure in terms of your scope. So you find this is also applicable especially to some software implementations or developments, although most people they try to use Agile, but this is also important. And you'll find it's also possible in construction industry or projects. So what does it mean to say fixed price? It means the estimation of the scope, the estimation of the price, the estimation of the costs, the estimation of the timelines or the schedule. It's something that can be done from a project point of view, either through experience or maybe through some expert judgments. So at the end of the day, the supplier is going to agree with the client, or the buyer is going to agree with the seller. There are also cases where it's an advantage to the seller who is the supplier. So in a fixed price contract, It's normally applicable to projects where you are very sure in terms of your timelines, you are very sure in terms of your costs, and you are also very sure in terms of your scope. So you find this is also applicable, especially to some software implementations or developments, although most people, they try to use Agile, but this is also important. And you'll find it's also possible in construction industry or projects. So what does it mean to say a fixed price? It means the estimation of the scope, the estimation of the price, the estimation of the costs, the estimation of the timelines or the schedule. It's something that can be done from a project point of view, either through experience or maybe through some expert judgment. So at the end of the day, the supplier is going to agree with the client, or the buyer is going to agree with the seller. If you want to dive deeper into understanding and appreciating project management, I've also created for you a comprehensive ebook, which you can find in the link in the description below. It will help you to understand what is project management, what skills do you need to become a project manager, or what skills do you need to improve as a project manager to become successful. In terms of how much is it going to take to complete the project? Say, for example, you're constructing a 4-story building. Obviously, it's something that you can predict based on your experience, or even a 6-story or 10 or 50-story building. So you know that the kind of materials required based on the client's requirements. You know where to source them, for example, and you also know how much it's going to cost in terms of labor and any other associated expenses on the project. So you agree upfront with the client that for this particular project, say for example, it's a software development, it's going to take us, say for example, 12 months, and within these 12 months, we need $3 million to complete. So you get into a contract agreement with the client with such terms that the amount is 3 million. So what has just happened is the customer or the buyer, they just transferred the responsibility or the risk from their side to the seller or to the supplier. So the risk now lies more with the supplier. They have to deliver what has been agreed in scope. They have to deliver according to the timeline. They have to deliver also according to the expected costs. So that is very, very important to note. So before you sign any fixed price contract as a project manager, you need to consider these specific items. Whether you are on the client side or you're on the buyer side, or you're on the seller side or the supplier side, you also need to consider what kind of project contract do you want to be involved in. There are some cases where it works well, especially for short-term and small projects. There are also some cases where it does not work very well, especially when it comes to so much uncertainty in the project. So it's quite important that you appreciate and understand what needs to be done, or what kind of contract that you have to take. Your due diligence should be very fair and confirmed that you are going to be able to make it. Otherwise, the risk is now on you who is supposed to deliver the project. So it's quite important to understand that. So there are about three types of fixed price projects that you should expect in project management. So the first one is where you have a firm fixed price. So what do we mean by this? It means the amount, the timelines and everything has been agreed upfront, scope and everything. It has been agreed upfront. So it's very clear to both parties, the client and the supplier, on what is supposed to be delivered in terms of scope, how long is it going to take in terms of timelines, how much is it going to cost. So these are firmed up prices. And there are certain cases where it's very easy to do that. Say, for example, it's painting of a building. You know the quantities of paint that you want to use, the labor that you know, and also the hours that are required. So to some extent, within the range of 95 to 100% correctness, your probability, you are very sure in terms of how much is it going to take you, and even your price, your agreed price between the parties, is as close as possible to what has been estimated. So this first category, you can use it for fixed price projects. Then the second one is when you have fixed price plus incentive. What do we mean by this? Say, for example, you are painting a house, or you're developing a software. You might have an agreement between the parties that even if it's going to be taking 10 months and it's going to cost 1 million as an example. If I deliver in 6 months, for example, or 7 months, you pay my 1 million, which was agreed, and also an extra amount, which is a fee or incentive that you give to the supplier. So you also find such kind of agreements, fixed price agreements, in projects, where after delivery you also get some incentive. So it's one of the categories. And then the third one that you should expect to see is what is called fixed price with economic adjustment. So what does it mean? Economic price adjustment. You might agree today to say we want to deliver something, say for example $200,000, and then due to some other market forces or economic situation, so many things have changed, okay, economically. Then you are forced to adjust. Instead of 200,000, you can adjust the amount to 250 or 240, depending on how you are agreeing with the client. So that's also a third part or a third category of fixed price projects. So looking at fixed price projects, like I said earlier, there are cases where it's applicable. There are cases where it's not applicable, especially if there's a lot of uncertainty. I wouldn't advise that you go for a fixed price project. I would advise that you prefer something like a time and material. We're going to cover that in this video. So, in a project environment, you might find that there is another category of a contract or agreement, which is called Cost-Reimbursable Contract. So, Cost-Reimbursable Contract, we can delve deeper into it and understand. It means you agree with the client to implement or to run a project, and you also pay for the cost, and then the client is going to reimburse based on the cost structure that you have incurred during the project. There are also cases where this is very applicable. I've seen it especially when it comes to a project to finish a building or an office, which might take about a month or 2 months. You'll find that the supplier normally they produce all the required furniture, as an example, and then they invoice the client, which means they include their labor costs, and then they also include the material costs. Some have done it also for some small buildings like houses. I've seen others doing that, having a contract which is cost reimbursable for houses. So it's also possible that you might want such a scenario where you agree upfront on a certain amount with the client, and then any other costs that is coming from the project, the supplier can invoice the client and the client can pay. Now, there are also 3 categories that you should expect when you have a cost reimbursable project contract. So the first one is costs plus fixed price. So what do we mean by this? I'll give you an example. Say you want to construct a building, a 3-story building, and it's going to cost 3 million, okay? So you agree with the client that the cost is going to be 3 million. And then also, I'm also going to have my fixed price of 500,000. So the total cost expected for that contract is going to be about 3.5 million. So this is one kind of a cost plus fixed price cost reimbursable project contract that you can come across. It applies in most cases, and it all depends on the trust between the parties. There are some cases where the trust is not very much on the 100%, so therefore they might ask for some few dollars as part of initial payments and so on and so forth. But it's also one of the categories. Then the second one you're also expecting to see is the cost plus incentive. What do we mean by this? So you agree upfront as a contract with your client or customer or even buyer that even if it might cost me $400, okay, to paint this house, and it's going to take me a week, assuming there's enough time to paint this house of 2 weeks, and then I decide, or I manage to complete in 10 days or even 11 days, you give me an extra fee of 15. It's just a way of incentivizing the buyers to make sure that they complete their work on time. I hope you're enjoying this video so far. If you're new to the channel, Don't forget to click the like button, the subscribe button, and the notification button, so that you're the first person to be notified each time a new video is uploaded on this channel. It will also help the channel to grow. It will also help the channel to produce more videos like this one. So in a cost-reimbursable contract type, you also find the same things, where the cost is on the side, but if you deliver earlier than planned, then you get an incentive. It's also one of the type of contract that you might come across in the project management activities. Then the last one is also on the cost plus award fee. So what does it mean? It means at the beginning of the contract, you agree. You agree on what is supposed to be completed in terms of cost, and then once you have agreed on what is supposed to be completed, if that completion is done on time, or that completion is done to the customer satisfactorily, then you can award them some extra amount for that work. That is also another type of category that you can find on a project environment. So the third and last type of contract or agreement you should expect in a project environment is what is called time and material. So in short, most people, they call it T&M. T&M is, the risk is highly on the customer or the buyer, because they have to pay based on the work that has been done. That is what is meant by time and material. So you work first, then you invoice the client accordingly. Then the client is normally verifying that whatever you are doing is actually proper. Then you agree on the submitted timesheet. For example, timesheet, you are just capturing what work was done, by whom, by which date, and so on and so forth. So it's quite important that you appreciate and understand this particular contract type. Time and material, you are charged based on what has been done. But you have to be very careful also. What I've seen in some of my projects, some of the suppliers, they, for example, if I was involved in one of the software projects, some of the suppliers, they are not very honest. You might have agreed that they're going to put in, say, for example, 10 resources to develop the software. They'll tell you 2 on-site, then 8 are off-site. Then later on, they'll tell you that in order for them to deliver some of the functionality that has been requested by the client, they want to increase the resources. So they'll just increase the resources up to from 10 to 15. So you're paying 5 more extra. But because it's time and material, as long as you can validate that the extra 5 resources, they did actually work on the project, and they are tangible or intangible results, then definitely the client will have to pay for that. So time and material is normally the most expensive contract or agreement in a project environment, because most of the things are not predictable. And the reason why I'm giving you software is because client requirements, they always come. So if it's a time and material, you are not going to reject. Assuming you have 10 people, they are all fully loaded in terms of project work. So at the end of the day, you might be forced to bring in 5 or 10 more people to accommodate the additional requirements that are coming in. And that's also an extra expense to the client or to the buyer. So time and material must be managed very properly. I've been involved in time and material projects, and I can tell you it can be very, very expensive, very, very expensive, because you are charged based on the work that is done. Whether you bring in 500 or 1,000, the supplier or service provider or vendor will accept. Then after accepting, they'll charge you. Then you pay. Which means from the beginning, you're not very sure in terms of how much is going to be the actual total cost for the project. It all depends on how much you're requesting, and also how much is being charged. How many resources, or in terms of support, how much support are you getting from the vendor? Then they'll charge you accordingly. So it's very important when you're choosing your contract or agreement to see what is beneficial to you, what is not beneficial to you, what is benefiting you, what is not benefiting you. So you might be asking in summary, Oscar, so which contract type or agreement type should I take in a project environment? I can tell you there's no straight answer to that. There are normally a number of reasons why you have to choose one contract over the other. And the basic one is maybe you know exactly the scope, you know the timelines, you know the cost. So in that scenario, you are more to choose on the fixed price than any other contract type. There are also cases where you don't want to be paying out so frequently. You want to pay out one lump sum amount of money. In such a case, you find you also go for cost-reimbursable contract or agreement. So in this cost-reimbursable contract agreement, you just get one invoice from the client in terms of the cost and in terms of their charges. Then you pay it once. So in such a scenario, you can be leaning towards a cost-reimbursable contract. There are also cases where time and material is also very important, especially if you're not sure of your scope, if you're not sure of your timelines due to a number of uncertainties. Then you can choose the time and material. But there's no hard and fast rule to say each time you see this particular type or this kind of project in this industry, this is the contract you have to go to. In some cases, you find it's also determined by the organizational policies, procedures, and rules, even the leadership preference. There's some leadership who prefer fixed price for planning purposes as compared to time and material. There are also some leadership in some industry who are towards time and material because they also understand the uncertainty. So it's quite important to be able to differentiate them. So make sure if you're a project manager or program manager, you're choosing the right contract agreements that best suits your situation. You tailor it to your situation. That is very, very important. If you want me to create more videos based on what we have discussed in this video, or probably you have something or some concepts that you want to understand, you can reach out to me or you can let me know in the comment section below. Thank you for watching.